Experience in the healthcare system. For the first 30 or 40 years of my life, I guess I basically maybe visited the hospital once every 10 years. However, in the last 20 or so years, I've been there several more times since, so different experiences. But I guess, you know, when my friend James was talking about the various initiatives that we've made over the years, and my niece Kim often reminds me of this. I'll tell you a little story. It kind of resonated with me today, the different things, and yesterday that you folks had talked about, all the problems you had with NIHB and the services and the care and the delivery that you attempt, and frustrations that you feel. When we were leaders, we were doing that at the provincial and federal levels. And I had occasion to rub shoulders with all kinds of ministers of the Crown. And with regard to health, I remember one experience very vividly. And I'm working right now with Dr. Neil MacLeod, who's from Saskatchewan. And we have been for the last 2 years chronicling my memoirs, and he lost his father here not long ago, and because he was the executor of the estate, he didn't have the proper time to grieve, so he's now taking that time and has taken some time from the work that we were doing together. But soon again, we will take those works to the publisher, hopefully by the end of this year. And in that story, in those memoirs, I will talk about this experience that I will share with you now. At the time that I was the national chief of the National Indian Brotherhood, which became the Assembly of First Nations, there was a Minister of Health called Monique Bégin. She was from Montreal. And they had gone through different name changes from medical services to Indian health and all kinds of names. In any case, at that time, we were battling cutbacks. You all know the story. And in particular, it was cutbacks to eyeglasses. And a delegation came in from British Columbia of First Nations leaders, chiefs. And so it fell upon us to arrange all the meetings. We arranged a meeting with the minister, deputy minister, assistant deputy ministers, etc. So away we went to meet with this minister, and the deputy and the assistant deputy were there. And they didn't like us, those people, because we were constantly thumping on their door, banging on their tables, and plucking at their eyebrows, browbeating them, in other words. And so they didn't care for us too well. In any case, we went. And so these chiefs, the late George Manuel was the head of the delegation, and he spoke eloquently about the needs of our people. And at that time, they had a gentleman working, a health technician working for them, who had these little eyeglasses, you know, those glasses that sit on the tip of your nose, and they're just kind of like little half glasses. Anyway, George Manuel points to this man, and he says, "You've cut back on our eyeglasses such that this guy can only afford half a pair," he said. So anyway, we had a good chuckle over that. And then, so after we made our case, the chiefs presented it. The BC First Nations have these beautiful button blankets. And I always lusted after one of those. I never did get my hands on one, so one of these days maybe I will. But in any case, they gave the Minister of Health, Monique Bégin, a beautiful, beautiful button blanket. And she took it received it very well. She was very proud. They put it around her shoulders, and she was glowing. She was absolutely radiant. She was so pleased with that gift. And it was heartfelt. And Deputy Minister and the Assistant Deputy Minister were there watching this ceremony, and they prayed before they gave it to her. I thought it was very well done, and I was proud to be part of that. And so we finished our meeting. We had promises of, yes, she would look into it. She directed her deputy, her assistant deputy, to investigate all of the issues that were raised by these First Nations leaders from British Columbia. Great. That's about the best we could expect from a meeting of that level. And we went on our way. The next morning I was in my office. I had a special phone, which I used kind of like the phone that presidents have when they're going to call it atomic war or something. Anyway, it was a special dedicated line just like for prime ministers and ministers. So that phone rang in my office. I thought, I wonder who this could be. So I picked it up, and lo and behold, it was Monique Bégin. Good morning, Chief, she says. Oh, good morning, Madam Minister. How are you today? Oh, I'm very well, thank you. And so I said, I have some very serious issues I want to talk to you about. Oh, I thought, good. She got some answers, and she's going to let me know. Okay. She said, it's about that blanket, she said. Oh, okay. It's a beautiful blanket. And she said, been advised by my deputy minister and my assistant deputy minister that blanket is cursed. And I almost dropped the phone, but I managed to hold on to it. And then she said, and further, that it's diseased. Oh, well, who told you this? And she says, my officials have told me. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I knew this deputy minister in particular really had a dislike for me personally. I don't know why. Maybe because he was always getting the brunt of what we were talking about, the treaty right, the medicine chest, and all this and all that. And it was the minister it was he to whom the minister had referred all these questions, and he had to answer them. So anyway, I sat stunned for a few seconds, and then I told her, well, Madam Minister, you have laboratories. You have access to them. Why don't you send that blanket to your laboratories to find out if indeed it is diseased? Well, I can do that, surely, she says. But I want to ask you personally, she said. Do you believe in these people? And do you believe in what they're talking about? I said, of course I do. And for your officials to say what they said about that being cursed, I said, offends the integrity of our people, offends my personal integrity and the integrity of those leaders. I said, I know all those people personally, and I'm very offended by that. And I told her, I want your apology, and I want the apology of your deputy minister and your assistant deputy minister for even thinking that our people would do those kinds of things to you. So, and I knew that those people were sitting in a room because I could hear voices in the background. So she cupped the phone with her hand, and I could hear muffled noises, and she was talking to people. And then later, a few seconds later, she came back on the phone. She says, Mr. Starblanket, she said, I believe you, and I trust you, and I trust your integrity. I said, good. And she said, I'll never forget what you said. And I said, and Madam Minister, I said, what about the issues? She says, we have to have another meeting, you and I, just you and I. Okay, I said, we'll do that. So, anyway, that will be a story that I will be recollecting together with Dr. Neil MacLeod. But with regard to the technical aspects of all of the discussions that you've been having here the last 2 days, I've lost 2 brothers in the last 3 years, both from diabetic complications. One who had a heart attack, the late great Chief Irvin Starblanket, and the other is my brother Jerry, who passed away last summer, also from diabetic complications. And I have diabetes as well. And on February 5th, 2011, I experienced a heart attack. Ended up in a hospital for 4 days. Fortunately, my adopted daughter was in the emergency room. She quickly gathered up 8 doctors and nurses and all that she could muster, and I was taken care of very well in that hospital. I went through an angiogram, and I just can't even remember the technical terms of these doctors. Endocrinologist was one of them, cardiologist was another, and a couple of more gists, but I just can't remember what they're called. Anyway, they were all hovering around me, and I had tubes in my body and, monitors and all of that. I almost died just from the sight of those things, But anyway, I survived. I went to, as my friend James had suggested, I went to my elders, and who gave me heart medicine, who took me into ceremonies, sweat lodges, sapastigan, all kinds of different ceremonies. And ultimately, I went to where I first began this journey, this healing journey. The man who gave me my first teaching spiritually as a man when I changed my life some 30 or so years ago. That was in Rocky Boy, Montana. He took me into a ceremony, and he took something out of my heart. And when I was in that angiogram, that doctor said, your vessels are totally clear. There's nothing wrong with your heart. I can't see anything. And he said, but you had a heart attack. I can't understand this. So therein lies the difference about what the medical staff and the technicians and all of those people understand about the ailments, and what our own spiritual people understand, and the differences about how to treat those ailments. And that's what I've begun to endure in the last 3 decades. And when I sit beside this young lady, and she reminds me of my own grandchildren, when I take them out picking the very things that she has, and I teach them and I ask, and I talk about these things because I've learned them on my own healing journey. I gave her my card. My card says, seeking balance intellectually, spiritually, physically, emotionally. It's what I've been attempting to do in the last 30 years. I'm happy to say that I have found some balance. I have not found complete balance, because I will never find that until I go up there. But I'm well on my way. Today I teach treaty. I am a member of the Speaker's Bureau for the Office of the Treaty Commissioner. I have been contracted by the Regina Public School Board to teach treaties to teachers and to teach in the schools. Last Thursday, I was in the city of Moose Jaw, in front of 1,500 children who wanted to learn about treaty. I've never had such an experience in my life. I've had some very wonderful experience in teaching treaty. And tomorrow I will be talking to more teachers. I have to leave today to go down there for tomorrow. And there I will be teaching treaty not from a health perspective, but from an education perspective. How to bridge the gap between our people, between elders, between teachers, and between children, between First Nations and non-First Nations. So I'll be wearing that cap from a treaty perspective. Today, from a health perspective, tell you a little story. We're beginning to teach these non-Aboriginal people, non-First Nations people about some of the protocols of our people. And one of them is about the sacred plants that this young lady talked about. And the first rule, the first protocol, of course, is tobacco. Now, you all know that provincial governments and health authorities and all the rest of the people have all said that the tobacco that we have today as it exists, as it has been manufactured, is not good. I think we can all agree on that. However, realizing that tobacco, when we originally had it, we didn't have cancer. We didn't have any of those poison and those chemicals in our tobacco. And a funny little anecdote that I have about presenting tobacco, these children, these white children are now being taught to present tobacco to an elder. So this cute little girl, maybe about 6 or 7 years of age, blonde, blue eyes, great, big, huge blue eyes, cute as a button, was designated to present this tobacco to the elder, me. So I'm standing there, and she comes walking up to me, and she looks up at me, and she says, "Mr. Starblanket?" And I said, "Yes." She says, "I want to present this tobacco to you. I would like you to tell us some stories about the treaty. Tell us about the history of First Nations people. Will you do that?" "Yes, I will." And I took the tobacco. And just forget, don't forget that I'm, 5'10". She's about 4 feet. And, she beckons down to me like this. So I bend over, and I put my ear close to her mouth, and she says, "And by the way, did you know that this tobacco is not good for you?" I said, "Yes, I do." What could I say? How do we move forward from here with all of your discussions? You obviously have all of the answers. I don't have to give you any of the answers, but I will say a couple of things. You've heard young people, and I went to talk to this young man after he spoke, talk about sovereignty and nationhood. I sat in this city in a meeting room just a few weeks ago in which our leaders stood up and talked about sovereignty and nationhood, who stood up and talked not about the treaty right, because that's sort of becoming passé now. What they're saying now is sovereignty and nationhood. And what you people are talking about, taking over all of these services, that's asserting your sovereignty and your nationhood. Do it. Don't ask anybody. Just do it. We had an episode in a school in Regina here a couple of weeks ago where a young First Nation student came into the school smelling of smoke. He had been smudging. And the teacher, a young white teacher, quickly sent him to the principal's office. The principal suspended this young man. Big kerfuffle in the newspapers, the television. So they called me in. So I sat in a circle with these people. It was not a very good circle. But I tried to bridge the gap between these white teachers and this Indian family. And I talked about the rules, and I talked about our protocols. And when we had that episode in the school, one of the schools that I work with, where a teacher was accused of sexual abuse of some of the First Nations students in that school. I also had to work with that situation. And I told the superintendent and the various educational authorities there at that time, when the principal and vice principal were enduring difficulty with that situation, and the rule of the Regina Board of Education was that you could not smudge in schools. Me and another elder said, be damned with the rule. We're going to smudge this principal and the vice principal because they need it right now. And we did that. We didn't ask anybody. We just did it. And if it meant that we were going to be fired from our job, then so be it. But we did it. And that's what I'm encouraging you people to do. Take it over. You heard Ted Quayosans, you heard others saying, we're having all these problems. Never mind, take it over. Do it. That's the best advice I can give you. Where do we go from here? Colby, Ted Quayosans, Darlene, Shirley, all of you people that recount all of the things that we have stood for over the years. My niece Kim reminds me constantly. Thank you for saying what you did back then. Now is the time. You've developed your capacity. You've developed your expertise. You have the technical competence. Do it. That's all I can tell you. When I hear, Albert Jimmy, when I hear Willie Ermine, I hear all those people talking about combining, melding these two thought processes, the spiritual medicines, and all of the technical aspects that you deal with it. And you have young women like this. And when you have the many women, First Nations women, that are heading the competency of these technical aspects, that harkens back to our original history. Who were the managers in our communities back then? It was the women. It was the women who did the medicines. I always ask women to touch the medicines that we pick. And the reason is, when the woman touches the medicine, it brings the power. It brings the gift. It brings the blessings to that medicine. And that's what I do. It's either my partner or my daughter or my granddaughter or nieces or some such that I ask to help me with those medicines. So when we do that, it's the women. So to you women, I say to you, find out about these things spiritually. You're doing the right things technically. Now embrace those spiritual concepts and work with those. Not asking you to convert to First Nations spirituality or that religion. I'm simply asking you to understand it in a way that no other people have understood it previous to this. You're doing that. Respect it, embrace it, work with it, and combine those two aspects. That's what I've tried to do in my life. That's how I've tried to seek balance. I often talk about this on my business card. I have a picture of horses. Today I have horses in my community. I rode a horse from Vernon, BC to Brandon. 49 days, 2,000 kilometers. I was 250 pounds. Today I'm 150 pounds. Okay? I had to seek some physical balance. Spiritually, I had to find my balance. Emotionally, from residential school trauma, I spent 11 years in an Indian residential school. I had to find balance. Intellectually, I read about these things. I'm preparing a presentation now. I will go home and I will write it tonight and I will present it tomorrow. Intellectually, I've had to gather statistics because one of the quotes that I read was, a person can have an opinion, but unless you have data to back it up, like you people have done, your opinion is not worth much. So you have the opinion, you have the data, you have the competence, you have the capacity, you have all that it requires Now get behind your leaders and tell them, go and negotiate this for us, go and get this for us. And it's up to you women to do that, and all the men who you will ask, you will solicit to support you. Do that. And that's what I wanted to leave with you. I wasn't expecting to be up here, but I never found a mic that I have refused yet in my life. So I'll leave that with you, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Noel, very much again. So I'm going to have Elder Matilda Lewis. Do you want to go up there, or do you want to? So Gladys is going to go up and.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Creator for lending me this day to come in front of all my relations. I just feel like I gain a big family here. And I also acknowledge my colleagues, the elders here, that have walked most important, I guess, business world, I would say. I want to acknowledge all the good meals that we had here and all the new friends that I have met. But first of all, I'd like to tell you a little story. And this is acknowledging the white buffalo gals that have climbed up there. You know, I'd like these girls to remember when we first met, how many years ago, how unsure they were. If an incident or something happened out of the ordinary, what was the first thing they said? What do I do? What do I do? Or burst into tears. Well, look at you today. I'm so proud of you. And I'm not too impressed about coming up here. What is your experience in the healthcare system? Well, when you're over 70 years old, you know, you've come a long walk. And I only can think and thank my parents for being who they were and for conditioning me to be who I am today. They taught me that a woman, and I had brothers and brothers-in-laws that I have heard say a woman was blessed and gifted to give birth to life and responsibility to take care of that life. And in times like today, when I look, what happens, like the FSIN is supposed to be to protect and enhance the treaty rights. And the FSIN, and I don't blame the FSIN. I thank them for all the hard work they've done in all the years. But also, I thank the Creator for guiding a woman up there. You know, we were blessed to give birth to life and also responsibility to take care of that life. And the Creator, who has this great big garden, and when I look in front of me, I always say I just see a garden, a flower garden, many colors. It's high time that we all leave behind the difficulties, the trials and traumas in our lives, and we've survived that system. It's just like when a child is born, it's such a social and emotional event. In our times, our children, when they were born, they were taken care of by elders way before the times they were born. There was no ultrasound back then. Today, there's ultrasound. There's all kinds of things happening to the fetus of that child that's going to be born. And we are also seeing life experiences that there's a lot of children that are different. But they're still gifts to our nation. Back then, it was mostly traditional medicine. I listened and I watched very carefully when my mother took us every year, those 2 months in the summer that we came to visit with them. I'd listen and I'd watch and I'd learn about the traditional medicines. And to this day, I still gather and pick, and I'd take my daughters and now my great-granddaughters with me when I go gathering and picking, so that they have something to take care of themselves with. And during the winter months, I was taught that summer was gifted to us to look after ourselves. In history, when I'm here today, there's a reason for that. When we look at history, our ancestors, there's a lot of them, our ancestors that have left this land. A lot of them left this land waiting for the other side of the party that had signed treaties with them to hold and live up to their promises. We have still many unfulfilled promises, and many of our chiefs and old great ancestors have left this land fighting for their rights. Here we are today, the descendants, and here we are gathering together, fighting, still asking, still looking, and still a lot of things being taken away from us. There's many things that happen in this world today, like the time orientation, and we can all laugh at this because we laugh at ourselves. We laugh together when we say you're on Indian time. And but we can laugh. We laugh because we're not on Indian time. If we were, we would have been here when the sun came up. And we will walk out of here when the sun goes down. That's Indian time. You know, there was no such thing as that little clock up there where you look at today's world, and we're copying a lot of things. Today's world, we got our offices. Well, my office is down the hall over there, and you flush instead of shredding your material. And when we look at that clock today, you know, back then we were taught, when you start something, you finish it before you start another thing. Like Mr. No Star Blanket here, I also am on the Speaker's Bureau of the Treaty Commissioner's Office. And I also go when invited to talk to teachers and to talk to students. And this time, I think I've been bullied over here. When we talk about our nation and all the gifts that we do have, those are the things that have helped me survive all the trials, traumas in my life. About our traditional teachings, the traditional ceremonies, all those gifts that the Creator had loaned our people to survive with in this world, where we use the fire spirit, the rock spirit, the water spirit, and the wind spirit. Those are all life elements, life-giving elements that we need to honor and respect. And it's not about, when we say spirituality, it's not about religion. It's who you are. You really have to look at you first, then look around you. If things become so difficult that you think nobody cares, go outside over there. Go outside. Talk to the spirit of that wind to blow away all the sad, hurt, guilt feelings away from you. And to ask him, ask that spirit to give you some of its mighty being, to give you that strength to learn to overcome difficulties, to give you some of its strength so that you will get up and go and accomplish what it is we need to accomplish. There's so many lessons out there. And I only talk about them because I was taught by a very good team of people, my parents. And I was taken away from them for 9 years. And I always say I could have learned more if I had known how to run away and hide. I can't even do that today. I try to go hide in the bathroom for a while. You know, we copy so many things, and we're leaving in the trail behind all the good lessons that we learned from our ancestors, from the land. Go for that. Go for that knowledge of the land. Go and stand up to that tree that stands tall in all kinds of elements and gets its strength from there. Learn from that tree when it sheds its leaves in the fall, how to let go of things. Learn to forgive. Learn to, you cannot forget. I'll never forget what happened to me in my young days. Never. But I can forget the words. I can overlook and overcome all the pain and hurt that I've come through. I hear, the stories that we hear. There's many stories that we hear and how bad it is. But our elders in the past, they already knew how many nationalities were going to be on this land. And when they signed treaties, they signed, there are conditions that were never meant, like all those things that they hoped that the treaties were based on. Miuicheton, to get along. Miuakoton, to have a good relationship. Miuitaskaneton, to be able to accept one another and live together. When I speak about the flower garden, think about it. When you look at the flower garden, many different colors, they're not separated in one color in one corner and the other color in the other corner. And so is the land. There's many different types of trees out there, and they don't stand separately. You don't see the big spruce trees all standing one side, you white poplars stand in the other side, black poplar over there. You don't see that. Little willows, go and hide yourself. You're tiny, you're nothing. You don't see that. The land, when we say look for that knowledge of the land, that's my teacher, that's my classroom, that's what I was taught, that's my church. I don't have to be boxed in to pray. I can pray anywhere, everywhere, because the Creator also created everything and everyone around me. And we need to learn how do we adjust? We have to go back to those teachings. Back then, you learned to adjust yourself to your surroundings. We can do that. For today's world, we try to adjust everything to please us. And what happens? We're in trouble. We have to be strong. There's many things in our cultures, in our nationalities, that teach us how to be who we are and how to be strong. My people, they talk about TP teachings. But just the Poles themselves teach us a lesson. Look at all of you here. Look at all the nationalities you're coming from. Why do we speak 4 directions? We come from 4 directions. Look at the poles of the teepee. How many? You can put as many as you want. What if you took each a pole and you're going to build a great big teepee? What has to happen? You look at the top of that teepee poles, they're tied together. We have to work together and find a way to straighten everything out instead of leaving the country, trying to follow another country's way. How did they do that? We have it here in your own backyard. And also, because of the time orientation, and because Matilda is just itching over there, just wishing to get up here, traditional teaching is our model. Look at the forest. You know, we have to learn all that. We have to go back to our ancestors and their way of knowledge. They didn't even speak English or read and write. And I only came up here because I see people walking up here looking very important. And I thought I better carry this so I can look important too. And you know what? I think it's because I've been silenced too long, because I've been told I was a savage, that I was a pagan, you know, just like the duct tape is Indian's best friend. Well, they put an invisible duct tape on my mouth, but I ripped it off now, and too bad for you. You can sit here till midnight. But anyway, we have our teachings. Dig them up, bring them out, they'll guide you. You know, we have to be strong. And that is why Creator put a woman on the FSIN team. And to my little friend, I hope someday you'll live up to your promise and come and visit me.
They're still trying to fight here. So, so Senator Matilda Lewis.
Good evening. First of all, inanas ko mga kutawin o ka iksewatsit. Nanas ko mon tahempe mamo mamskutsikig. Kikay maumoy kuya. Kitaskihkan na. Mina, dans kakitutami. Kikoy kakwes ko paik. My name is Saguowsko. My voice will echo and carry. That's what the elders had called me. And I try live up to that name. try. But there are times, as our elder said, we've been too quiet. These questions that we were given. What is your experience with healthcare system? We do have problems, yes. We do have community problems, yes. We have health issues. We have mental issues, spiritual issues. To me, when we have a medical problem, there's always ways to deal with it. In the old days, I myself have been raised by my grandparents, my kokum. I didn't know that there was a doctor or health center that existed at my time till I was older, because my nurse and my doctors were my grandparents. Till treaty day comes around, I hear one of the elders talking about treaty. I mean, the time when they took your x-ray and give you a needle. That was my first introduction to healthcare. And I still have a scar on my arm because of the needle. You know, and I had that fear of health centers or hospitals because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was all about. No, when I talk, I'm bilingual because my language is more powerful than the Munyao language that I borrowed. I have more meaning, my language has more meaning than a Munyao language to me. You know, what I need to say comes from the heart. And I have to use my language in order to say what I want to say. So I am bilingual when I'm speaking. You know, I try go back and interpret what I just said. A lot of us forget where we come from, who we are, and what we are. And we blame the system, the Munyao system, the white man system. We blame. What we learn as children stays with us. Some of you went through a residential school. Some of you went through all that hell, whatever you went through in residential school. I guess I can consider myself lucky. My parents, my Gogum and Mushum, didn't allow me to go to school. I asked to go to school. I said, "Kichix naman tugam gumanis to kipaknin." I said, I wanted to go to school, to a residential school. And they sat back and said, "Moya, aywa ka kitamaksin. You think you're poor right now, but you will be poor if you go there." And I didn't understand what they were saying. And they talked about treaty at that time. He said, "Nigan, kakwens tawimson. You have to try and know who you are. Get to know who you are. When you do know who you are, you will know where you're going to go." This name that you were given as a child is the thing that's going to carry you. It's the thing that is going to make a difference. talk about mainly traditional, cultural, spiritual. As I say, I am from the old school. I was not allowed to go to school till I was about 10 years old. Because, as my kukum say, Nigan, awa sis, when you're raising a child, nowadays it's so different. It's so different. When you're raising a child, you have to plant that seed in that child about who they are, where they come from, and where they're going to go. You have to be, as a woman, as a mother, you are the caregiver. You are the giver of life. You are the root of that life as a caregiver. We talk about health. You are responsible for that, for the health of that child that you're loaned to. You are the firekeeper. In the old days, we never had no electricity. As far back as I remember, I was the fire starter, keep the fire going at night. Why? I didn't understand. Then my kukum said, because you are the giver of life. You are the fire of that TP. You are, excuse me, you are the teacher. You are, if you live right, if you choose the right path, you will know, you will understand what we're saying now. Right now, you may not understand, but over there, you will. As a woman, as I say, we talk about fire. We talk about water. We talk about the air that we breathe in, the wind. The gifts of life. We talk about Mother Earth, the Creator. Umakiwai, ikipak naho tahaski. Kapmachihuagya, for us to use. One thing my kokum and Muslim used to tell me, never claim this world or this land that we walk in is yours. Never say, this is my land, this is my country, this is my home. He said, we were put here on earth. We come from Mother Earth, the body of Mother Earth through creation. We come from Mother Earth's body. I see you in ego. And where we get our breath is from our grandfather, wind. And there's water within us. Those are the gifts, the blessings. Because he said, once you start saying, this land is my land, this world is my world, and all this and that, he said, you're going the wrong way. Only the Creator knows, and Mother Earth, and the stars that are grandfathers, the pipe that's on the sky, the small pipe, the men's pipe, and the small pipe, the ladies' pipe. Those are the universe. He said, once your work is done on earth, this borrowed life that we have, once your work is done, you go back to earth. You're going to be back to earth. You're going to go back. That's why he said, never claim. Itipate manomaski. Kutawi no nakakyusihat. Kiano monte mohteto tamahomaski. We're walking on Mother Earth. And we have to respect that. So much for talking about health care. I'm getting carried away here. Living up to my name here. How do we move on from here? Where do we go from here? That's for you to know and me to find out. I talk about cultural, talk about traditional medicines. I talk about Mother Earth. My university, I call it, because that's where we heard the past elder talk about the garden of medicines. Talk about who we are as humans. Excuse me. Where do we go from here? We talk about treaties, our treaty rights, inherent rights. You know, we forgot along the way what they are. Who are the holders? The holders are Kia. The pipe carriers, medicine people. Because we are amigos, the gift, the respect. When I talked to my Mukugams, pipe was used when treaties were signed. It did not give away land because we were supposed to live in harmony together. Treaty right to health, I said. Talk about traditional medicines, spirituality awareness, and where do we go from here? Leadership. Leadership have to learn I don't know if I should say this. Leadership and health directors have to put aside their egos and their pride. They have to get back to reality. Because there's some elders out there that cannot speak for themselves, that don't know the borrowed language of English, the understanding of English. Sure, we are basic. I am basic. I don't understand these high terms, language, and all this and that. I'm a down-to-earth person. But where do we go? Our leaders. We depend. We are the ones that choose those leaders for our communities to speak on our behalf as elders. We have a lot of elders. But some of these elders cannot speak for themselves. And that's why I say leaders have put aside their pride and their egos and get to the same level. Speak on behalf of the elders. When I talk, I get emotional because I see I was raised by Gokums Muslims. And I have to learn what it was, what it is, the four directions, what it means. I had to learn about the sky, what it means, the wind, the water, the fire. And it's a hard lesson. It's really hard. When talking about home life, I am a mother. A wife, first of all. First of all, I'm a wife. A mother of one. A grandmother of 4. And a great-grandmother of 10. That's why I always think about the children that are about to come. I don't want them to say, hey, somebody cared enough to speak on our behalf. If we don't say nothing, of course the government is going to pull the rug under your feet or our feet. I'm looking forward to the end of my journey. But while I'm here, I want to leave footmarks. I said that to my children. I said, I've been around. I've been in the addiction field. I've been in leadership. I've been a medical driver. Now, I sit in a step